profits, leverage, expectations, confidence, complexity, interconnectedness, speculation, and bubbles went up. So that's the last 20 years. Now the next slide, please, Sarah. More? One more? More? There. Now we narrow the focus. A moment ago we were talking about the last 20 years. Now we're talking about the last 1 year. You saw the rescue of Bear Stearns last year. You saw the conservatorship of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Do not come into this room this afternoon at the Marriott in Karachi and think that the United States saved Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac last year. They saved, on September 7th, they saved the good name of the United States Treasury. Because had they let Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac go into bankruptcy, you would not have sent your money to the Treasury. So they received phone calls. Paulson received phone calls from Saudi Arabia, from Korea, from China. Do not let Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac go bankrupt, because we bought that paper thinking that it was like Treasury paper. Then we go down here to Sunday, November 23rd, special rescue package for Citigroup. Now that was either the third or the fourth rescue package. It's like my wife's brother. He's been married either 3 times or 4 times. We don't know which, okay? It's a big family secret. We don't know how many times he's been married. It's between 3 and 4. And you see the bottom there where it says True Confessions. Does anybody know what that relates to? That relates to a man telling his son that he's been running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme for the last 20 years. Mr. Madoff. And look, Pakistan has so many positive things. They've avoided a lot of the craziness that the Western banks got all worked up in, the over leverage. There's population growth. Look, Indonesia's got around the same number of people. Pakistan, 170 million people. I don't know. Indonesia, 200 million people. But they're spread out all over islands all over the place. And this island doesn't speak to that island. Yes, you can text them, but there's different languages, and there's a great energy here, and there's a great centrality that if you had to create a country from scratch today, to sit it here between China, India, oil, and South Asia, there's a phenomenal geographic and population set of blessings that have been given. And so let's go to the next one. Keep going. Too many words on that one. More. Please go more. Now this one shows, ladies and gentlemen, January, February, March, April last year. I just point out that January was the worst January, except for one, in all of U.S. stock market history. The worst one was January 1974. This past January was minus 6%. The worst was 7%. And as January goes, usually goes the year. 75% of the time that works. It doesn't work 100% of the time. So now, Sarah, let's look at the next one. So this January was the worst ever, minus 8.6%. And February was down another 11%. It's hard to read that because of the colors, but it's minus 11%. And March, by March the 9th, the head of Citigroup and the head of Bank of America said we made a profit in January and February. Remember that? And the market started to go up. And so March was a very, very powerful rally, and it ended up in the black, 8.5%. Go back one, please. There's the Baltic Dry Shipping Index. That's something that I think people here recognize is the cost of shipping coal and grain and sugar okay, iron ore, and you see that was a representation. It's bounced a little bit off the bottom, and now it's started to turn down a little bit. But it has fallen that is another indication of world trade. Okay, Sarah. More. Now, what is happening? What is happening is people are attempting, basically, markets cannot find a bottom until the financials make a bottom. Okay? Have the banks reach their bottom? Citigroup fell from $55 to $1. Now it's $3. Okay? Has the financial stocks made a bottom? Are there going to be banks that are, when the stress test is released in April 19th, that's the day they're estimating they're going to release the results of the stress test of the top 15 banks. Are some banks going to fail? Is General Motors going to fail? They told me last year that Lehman Brothers, when they let Lehman Brothers fail in September, that it was very bad for the world. And now they're talking about letting General Motors fail. We have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening. We are right now in a situation in which we're not being driven by fundamentals or valuations. We're being driven by psychology, by perception, by image, and by human behavior instincts. We're not being driven by fundamentals. So if you let General Motors go, if it goes bankrupt, there are possible psychological ramifications that they just did this with Lehman and they regret that they did it with Lehman. You see the bottom left, it says struggle for control. Right now, the markets are in a struggle with the authorities for control. The authorities is the European central banks. The authorities is the G20 that met in London on April 2nd. The authorities are the central banks and the treasury and the finance ministers all over the world. And you and I are in a struggle with them because we would like to force the truth from the financial institutions. We want to know the truth. Some people say the banks, they have had losses of $1 trillion so far globally. They say it's going to go to $2 trillion. Professor Rubini says it's $3.6 trillion. Bill Gross of PIMCO says it's going to be $5 trillion. The total equity capital of all the banks in the world is $1.2 trillion. So in a way, in some ways, people are accepting that the governments are really supporting the banks. But there is a struggle going on. There is a struggle going on for control and stability in the markets right now. You see where it says search for leadership? Search for leadership. We want our leaders to have strength, character, backbone. We want our institutions to have probity and transparency, and we want our money to have safety and stability. And that third one is the one that I worry about most because we have flooded the world with extra money now.